5,000 rupee allowance to be given to eligible families in the Western Province. A 10,000 rupee hamper to be provided to families that are in quarantine.
අපිට මේ රෝගය මෙතනින් පැතිරෙන එක වළක්වා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා තමයි සෞඛ්‍ය බලධාරීන් කියන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒකට සම්පූර්ණ සහයෝගය දෙන්න.
Plans to open wholesale stores in PETA and economic centres from tomorrow. More COVID-19 patients reported today. Over 300 discharged after recovery. Attorney General informs the acting IGP to launch an investigation into alleged land grab racket with political influence.
Hello and a very good evening. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Dasni Athauda. Starting off with your top story tonight. The government has decided to provide the 5,000 rupee allowance to eligible families in the Western Province who are not undergoing quarantine. Individuals and families who are currently under quarantine will be provided a hamper worth 10,000 rupees.
The Presidential Task Force on Economic Revival and Poverty Eradication, during a meeting convened at the Temple Trees today, discussed in depth about the measures taken to provide relief to the general public. The meeting was chaired by Basil Rajapaksa, chairman of the Presidential Task Force on Economic Revival and Poverty Eradication.
මේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක තුන මේ වෙනකොට සතියකට වැඩිය ඇඳිරි නීතිය දැම්මන.
We have decided to provide the 5,000 rupee allowance to locals residing in Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutara districts. Accordingly, the allowance will only be provided to families who are eligible for such relief measures.
සියලුම සුදුසුකම් ලත් පවුල් වලට රුපියල් 5,000 ලබා දිය යුතු තියෙනවා.
The distribution of food and essential items in areas where quarantine curfew is currently underway was also discussed during the meeting. The respective sectors were instructed to follow a mechanism where food and essential items will be delivered to the doorstep.
මේ වෙනකොට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවාවන් පැත්තෙන්
All arrangements have been made to provide utilities such as electricity, water, gas and fuel without any interruptions. We urge the cooperatives and other institutions to deliver the products to the doorstep by issuing curfew passes to the relevant officials at the divisional secretariats and police stations. We do not have any plans to permit shops and supermarkets to open. We urge all of you to deliver all products. This was done successfully during the previous lockdown and we want you to continue this task.
ගිය පාරත් ඒක ඉතාම සාර්ථකව කෙරුණා. ඉතින් ඒ කටයුත්ත කරන්න.
During the meeting, a decision was also reached to restrict travel between districts and to limit the issuance of curfew passes.
සෞඛ්‍ය අංශය වැඩි ලෙස ඉන්නේ සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම.
The health authorities are holding a firm stance that curfew should be in effect for at least another 10 days. If this isn't done, it will be more gruesome for the country. It's been more than a month for the Gampaha district. When a process is stopped, it isn't easy to recommence it. If it is in the state sector, it can be done. But for an example, if the vegetables on a lorry go to waste, it's hard to collect the money to get more vegetables. We know how difficult it is to recommence operations. That is why we are attempting to curtail the virus spreading to other provinces. Announcing curfew is a simple task. Daily wage earners cannot earn for a few days even after curfew is lifted because they need to find work. That is why we request the people to act responsibly over the next 7 days. If that happens, we can control the spread. That is the opinion of health authorities. Please support it. COVID-19 cannot be defeated just because one is rich or powerful. We need everyone's support to succeed in this endeavor.
අපි ඔබ සියලු දෙනාගේ සහයෝගය ඇතුව ඒ කටයුත්ත යම් ආකාරයකට කරලා තියෙනවා. මේක සාර්ථක කරගමු.
Basil Rajapaksa also instructed the authorities to take measures in ensuring all factories will continue its operations.
කිසිම කෙනෙක්ට රැකියා හිමිවීමක් නොවන විදියට වග බලා ගන්න.
You must ensure that no one will lose their job. All factories in Colombo and across the island must continue operations, and I urge all of you to support this endeavor. Just because we decided to provide the 5,000 rupee allowance, do not encourage your employees to stay at home. This will only add to our burden. On one hand, we will lose our export income. On the other, our people will lose their jobs.
අනිත් පැත්තෙන් මේ අපිට නිසි පරිදි රස්සාවල් නැති වෙලා ආර්ථිකය කඩා වැටෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaraweera says that it is decided to reopen economic centres and to recommence the goods distribution network of supermarkets.
අද දිනේ බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමාගේ ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් රැස් වෙච්ච කමිටුව තීන්දුව කරා
The committee that was chaired by Basil Rajapaksa decided to reopen all the closed economic centres in the country. Thereafter, it was decided to start a program to distribute vegetables and dry rations to people with the assistance of police and divisional secretariats. Thereby, steps will be taken to reopen the economic centres located in Ratmalana, Narayanpeta, Hokandara, Veyangoda and Meegoda by day after tomorrow. We will bring the goods in bulk and introduce a distribution method. The farmers will not have to be afraid. We will make sure that their produce will be purchased. Also, the consumers will not have to be afraid. We will take steps to distribute all essential items. Also, at a meeting chaired by President, it was decided to open all supermarkets. 15 vehicles have been allocated to each supermarket to distribute goods. Anyone can place an order at the supermarket and get what they want delivered to their house.
ඕනම කෙනෙකුට සුපර්මාකට් වලට ඇනෝම් කරලා භාණ්ඩ නිවසට ගෙනා ගැනීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the Essential Food Commodities Importers and Traders Association says the PETA market will be opened from 5 a.m. to 3 a.m. tomorrow. The association says that people can obtain a curfew pass and visit the market from anywhere in the country. Large crowds gathered at police stations and divisional secretariats in the Western Province today to obtain curfew passes, resulting in long queues. I am a building design contractor. I'm having difficulty to provide my subordinates with money or even some food. So I decided to obtain a permit which would enable me to do so.
අපි හෙට්ටිපුලෙන් පිටර ගියන්නේ මේ කිලිම දාවිට ට්‍රාන්ස්පෝර්ට් කරගන්න අපිට පර්මිට් එකක් නැහැ. අපි මේ සර් මෙතන පැය 3ක් විතර.
It's been more than 3 hours since we came here. There is only one person issuing passes. A large queue has formed now. I've been in line since 6:30 in the morning. They should streamline this process. If not, it's a waste of time. More than 500 people gathered at the premises of the Kaduwela Divisional Secretariat this morning to obtain curfew passes. I am a retail trader. The police asked me not to sell but to deliver goods. I asked them if I can obtain a permit. When I went to the police to obtain one, they asked me to write a request letter. Then they asked me to go to the AG's office. That is why I am here.
An overwhelming number of requests have been made for the issuance of curfew passes. This has thrown the lives of the employees of the office in jeopardy as well.
The police media spokesperson this evening explained the process of obtaining a curfew pass. We have decided to issue 15 curfew passes for 15 delivery vehicles operated by any supermarket or satosa. We have also permitted pharmacies to deliver pharmaceuticals and medicine that have been purchased online. 10 curfew passes will be issued to restaurants. Those who require a curfew pass must visit the Divisional Secretariat's office. We have assigned a police officer to each Divisional Secretariat to handle this matter. Therefore, despite what was announced a few days ago, there is no requirement to open supermarkets during curfew. Crowds will not gather opposite supermarkets either.
තමන්ගේ අවශ්‍යතා සඳහා භාණ්ඩ මේ ආකාරයට ලබා ගැනීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා.
275 more COVID-19 cases were identified this evening from the Duvlapitia and Paliguda clusters. 43 among them are from quarantine centres and 134 have been identified as close contacts of the Paliguda cluster. According to the Government Information Department, the total number of COVID-19 cases emerged from the Duvlapitia and Paliguda clusters have gone beyond 7,000. The epidemiology unit of the department says that the total number of COVID-19 cases in the country is at 11,224. With 344 people recovering from the virus today, the total number of recoveries in the country rose to 5,249. Meanwhile, the epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health has reversed its decision to include the suicide victim to the country's COVID-19 death toll. Thereby, the total number of COVID-19 deaths in the country was revised to 21 by the Ministry of Health.
පහුගිය කාල සීමාව තුළ ගිය
Many who passed away recently were identified as COVID-19 patients after conducting post-mortem PCR tests. This development gives us all a very important message. Many of the deceased are senior citizens. Some were very young. The younger individuals who fell victim to the virus are those currently suffering from another disease or health conditions. This is why such vulnerable groups must be protected.
දැඩි අවදානම් කණ්ඩායම් වලින් මේ රෝගයෙන් ඒ අයව ආරක්ෂා කිරීම වැදගත් වෙන්නේ.
Reports of COVID-19 patients emerged from a number of areas today. The Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka confirmed that a member of its auxiliary staff had contracted COVID-19. It added, while close contacts of the staff member have been directed for PCR tests, the High Commission premises has been sanitized. 6 members of the Colombo Fire Brigade have tested positive for COVID-19. Epidemiologist attached to the Colombo Municipal Council, Dinuka Guruge, said other officials of the brigade have been directed for PCR tests. She noted all COVID-19 patients identified from Colombo city limits have been admitted to hospitals. A private apparel factory in Horana was shut down temporarily after 37 of its employees tested positive for the virus. Another batch of employees attached to the factory was subjected to PCR tests today with intervention of the Mahara MOH office. An individual from Dodangoda who tested positive for COVID-19 on the 29th of last month was sent for treatment.
The individual has travelled in the area disregarding our directives. Therefore, we had to direct 10 to 12 families to self-quarantine. Around 35 people of the 75 we tested had contracted the virus because of one person. It could have been avoided.
One COVID-19 patient was detected from the Hambantota Health Services Division yesterday. Authorities were unable to transport the patient to a treatment centre yesterday due to the lack of an ambulance. The person is a resident of Sunamigama. According to our correspondent, 8 people residing in Hambantota, Sippikulama and Sunamigama have been directed to self-quarantine after coming into contact with the patient. V. Premnath, the Regional Director of Health Services for Trincomalee, says the number of COVID-19 patients in Trincomalee has increased to 12. The number rose after a doctor attached to the Trincomalee-based hospital tested positive for the virus. He is a resident of Kotahena. 30 people who came into contact with the doctor have been asked to self-quarantine.
It has been reported that nearly 50 medical staff workers, including doctors, have tested positive for COVID-19. When we spoke of our medical capacity back in March and April this year, we did not witness any medical staffers contracting the virus. However, it seems that the virus has become more severe this time. Medical staffers contracting the virus has led to the closure of many wards and departments at hospitals. This may affect the capacity available for medical treatment. Therefore, we must protect our medical staffers. We urge the government to provide personal protective equipment to all health workers, members of the 3 armed forces and STF, police officers and frontline workers. We also urge the government to constantly carry out PCR tests on these individuals to identify whether they have contracted the virus or not.
PCR පරීක්ෂාව ලක් කිරීම හරහා තමයි ඒ අය මුල් අවස්ථාවේ ඉඳන් අපිට අඳුර ගන්න වෙන්නේ.
Meanwhile, during a media briefing today, police media spokesperson DIG Ajith Rohana spoke about a group of police officers who tested positive for COVID-19. The police officers who tested positive for COVID-19 did not contract the virus while carrying out their duties or checking vehicles. Those who tested positive for the virus are those who visited the Paligode fish market. These police officers were assigned to purchase fish for the canteens and restaurant operating at their offices, and this is why they visited the fish market. However, this situation is now under control. About 12 police officers tested positive for the virus yesterday. They tested positive for the virus while in quarantine.
නිරෝධායනයට ලක් කරලා තිබුණේ නිරෝධායනයට ලක් කරලා තිබිච්ච ස්ථාන වලින් ගත්ත සාම්පල් වලින් තමයි ඔවුන් පොසිටිව් එහෙම නැත්නම් ආසාදිත තත්ත්වයට පත් වුනේ.
The COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc across many sectors in the economy as well. With the extension of quarantine curfew in the western province, vegetables, fruits and produce stockpiles are increasing at economic centres and wholesale trading points. Although traders arrived at the economic centres yesterday to purchase vegetables, the purchased produce was returned after quarantine curfew was extended in the western province.
These were fruits that were supposed to be sold in Colombo. But now Colombo is under curfew and these products are going to waste. The government must intervene and ensure these fruits are distributed in areas where they are not available. Not a single trader arrived to purchase the produce from us. The government must intervene and purchase these products from the farmers at a fair price.
නැත්තම් මේ එළවලු ටික ඔක්කොම ආයෙත් ගිහිලා දිගම්පතා කැලේට තමයි දාන්න දෙන්නේ මිනිත්.
එතකොට දැන් ඇත්තටම එළවලු පරිභෝජනයට අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රදේශ ඔක්කොම මේ ඇඳිලි නීතිය දාලා බ්ලොක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට මේ පැත්තට තමයි එළවලු දැන් අපි එළවලු තියෙන පැති වල තමයි මේවා දැන් විකුණලා තියෙන මේ පැති වලට. ඒකයි මේ බ්ලොක් එක.
MP Premitha Bandara Thennakoon visited the Dambula Economic Centre today to inquire about the prevailing situation.
The government has decided to open all economic centres in Colombo. Instead of opening the Manning Market, operations will be diverted to the Shanika Hall. All economic centres in Ratmalana, Bokundara, Veyangoda and Valisara will be opened. We believe that this decision will help our farmers and relax the current lag in operations. Remember, the government will no doubt intervene and solve the problems of the farmers. The government, together with many factions, are currently working on implementing a mechanism to sell vegetables to those in the Western Province.
The economic centre in Norachole faces a similar situation. Traders claim that they are compelled to use the vegetables and produce currently piled up at the centre as animal feed.
Traders are not visiting the economic centre to make any purchases because Colombo is currently under curfew. All vegetables and produce are taken to Dambula and then destroyed. We throw about 4 to 5 lorries full of produce each day.
Amidst the COVID-19 situation in the country, this coast in Chilav, where fish was once traded, is now used as a centre to dry fish.
The price of a kilo of fish has declined to 100 rupees. The fishermen and their dependents are helpless now. How can we make ends meet by selling fish at 100 rupees per kilo?
These fishermen urge the authorities to implement a mechanism immediately to expedite the sale of fish. While vegetable farmers and fishmongers are suffering because they cannot sell their produce and their catch, some people in the Western Province are suffering without access to food. This is a house in Galahena, Peruvala. It is from the daily wage he gets from labour. The breadwinner of this household takes care of his wife, 2 children and his mother. Due to quarantine curfew, he is unable to take up any work and the entire family is left destitute because of this. We have no mode of income. We do not have anything to eat or drink. One of the children needs milk powder. They cry in hunger. Today my husband went to pluck coconuts. Even though the government said that they will provide relief, we did not receive anything. My mother has about 1,500 rupees in her Samudri account. That is what my mother has. How can our entire family make ends meet with that money? Meanwhile, many people who have come to Colombo city for employment purposes are now inconvenienced because they cannot travel to their homes. I have been here for a week. We do not report to work as they did not call us. No eateries have been opened yet. We request to provide us with a concession and set up a plan for us to go back home.
We have been confined here without having anything to eat or drink. We have come to Colombo from afar. We are from Valimada. Last time we got something to eat. This time we did not get anything.
A video showing a group of ministers, including Minister of Health Pavitra Vanyarachi, immersing Pirit pen to rivers with the hope of eradicating the COVID-19 pandemic from the country is currently making the rounds on social media.
The health minister in the beginning itself hugged the Chinese woman who was infected with COVID-19. She then chose the first, second and the third patients. She thereafter announced that Sri Lanka and its leadership was the first to eradicate COVID-19. But now we see her carrying pots and walking to rivers while requesting people to stay safe. The people are angry because their means of income have been obstructed. So when you are close to rivers, be careful because the people might throw you to the rivers. Don't use the pandemic as an excuse for you to play political games. Act responsibly and strengthen the health system of the country.
They
informed the people that the curfew will be lifted a week earlier, so the people buy groceries for 2 or 3 days. But what are they going to eat now? This government has failed. The Minister of Health has failed. The Minister must resign from the position. The people do not have access to the truth. There is no platform to talk about the truth. We will introduce a hotline for people to talk about their grievances. We will allocate the next 15 days to speak about the injustice done to the people of this country.
අපි ඉදිරි දින 15 වෙන් කරනවා ලංකාවේ වෙච්ච අසාධාරණකම් වෙච්ච විදිය පෙළගස්සන්න අපි කටයුතු කරනවා.
If the people fulfill their responsibilities to the fullest, fighting this pandemic isn't going to be a tedious task. But unfortunately, there are some who don't adhere to these instructions. So because of their conduct, a potential lockdown can be imposed in the country. The government took all necessary measures during the initial stage itself, but there has been a delay and the virus has spread rapidly.
නයිධාතු වඩම්මලා කැලණියට අපහාස කරලා බුදුන් වැඩි බිමට අපහාස කරලා ඒ පටන්ගත්තු ආණ්ඩුව ගෝටා ෆේල් කියන්න ප්‍රධාන හේතුව තමයි ඒ අපේ බුදුදහමට අපහාස කරලා පටන්ගත්තු ඒ ගමන.
The reason why we say Gotabaya has failed is because he started his journey disrespecting Buddhism. They told that professionals will enter parliament, but now the Minister of Health is touring in Ratnapura carrying a pot to throw it into the Karu river wrapped with a polythene. Even Gammanpila did the same thing. Prasanna Rantunga did the same thing. When the country has to take a scientific approach, they are directing themselves to their own superstitious beliefs.
මන් දන්නේ එහෙමම ගිහිල්ලා ගඟට දානවා ඒ විදියටම දාලා සෞඛ්‍ය මැතිතුමිය අත් දෙක එකතු කරලා වඳිනවා. මොකක්ද මේ රට? අපි විද්‍යාවෙන් ඉස්සරහට යන්න ඕනි වෙනකොට නැවත වතාවක් මිත්‍යාව පැත්තට ගේන්න මේ උත්සාහ කරන්නේ.
Health experts have expressed that the current wave of COVID-19 is more critical than the previous one. So I request you to wear a K95 mask even if it is expensive. I know that those facing economic challenges will have an issue, but I request those who can afford to resort to this option. This is favorable to the environment and it will have a lesser impact when disposed.
නියම වෙලාවට නියම තීරණය ගත්තේ නැහැ 20 වෙනි
They didn't make the right decisions at the right time. They didn't take any steps until the 20th amendment was passed. This is why the spread is uncontrollable. I clearly say that this government has failed in all aspects. We are ready to help without expecting political benefits. But the opposition was not called for anything. Instead of asking the opposition to come forward, they made 8 from the opposition to switch teams. This is what they did.
වෙනුවට විපක්ෂයේ කට්ටිය ගත්තාට දෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මේක තමයි මේගොල්ලෝ කරේ මේ
We have provided a hamper worth 10,000 rupees which will be sufficient for a period of 2 weeks. We will also provide the 5,000 rupee allowance in the near future. The families who receive the 10,000 rupee allowance will not receive the 5,000 rupee allowance. We have provided the hamper to all families who are in quarantine in the Western Province and across the island.
පළවෙනි රැල්ල ඉවර වුණායි කියලා ආණ්ඩුව කියනවා සෞඛ්‍යාංශ කියනවා.
The government and the health authorities claim the first COVID-19 wave was controlled. It was against such a backdrop that the entire country rallied for an election. All they wanted was the vote. They never cared about the COVID-19 situation. The authorities must first think about the people's well-being before imposing curfew. How will people survive without food? Curfew was imposed and people were instructed to remain inside their houses, like caging your pet dog when it suddenly displays symptoms of rabies. They say a 5,000 rupee allowance and a food hamper will be provided. But how many actually would receive these?
බඩු මල්ලක් දෙනවා. මේක දෙන්නේ කීයෙන් කී දෙනාට?
We urge the government to terminate the 20th Amendment which split the country. Instead of behaving in a manner that would disregard the emotions of the people by clinging on to the 20th, the government has to focus on the lives of the people. We believe that it is the responsibility of the President to unite all people as the head of the state.
The General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Attorney at Law Sagara Karyavasam, says that the rumours of Basil Rajapaksa being sworn in as a Member of Parliament tomorrow are false. He said that if such a thing is done, the people would be informed of it prior to it. Sagara Karyavasam further noted that Basil Rajapaksa has not shown interest thus far to be appointed as an MP.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna says that there are no plans to impose quarantine curfew for the entire country.
As a
government, we would take the decision to lock down the entire country at the time that such a decision is required and not when various people want it. We are not ready to do so in a manner that would destroy the economy of the country.
The COVID-19 fund was also brought up at this discussion.
Various people who had faith in the concept presented by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa provided 1.675 billion rupees to this fund from the 20th of March until the 29th of October. 100 million rupees has been spent through the Ministry of Health to purchase machines required for PCR. Another 100 million has been spent to educate the public on this. 87 million has been spent for the renovation and maintenance of hospitals that are being used in the fight against COVID. 100 million rupees has been spent for the upgrades at the Batikilo Hospital and to provide for the Eastern Province. All this has been done through a committee. The committee comprises of the Governor of the Central Bank, the Secretary to the Ministry of Health and the Defence Secretary. This is completely under the Auditor General for it to be audited.
රජයේ විගණකාධිපතිවරයාගේ සම්පූර්ණ විගණනයට යටත් වන ගිණුමක්.
Also onto a story that made headlines, more than 100 whales had beached onto the Panadura coast today. We are now joined by Newsfirst Senitha Senanayake for a live update along with some live footage. Good evening, Senitha. What is the current situation over there?
Thank you, Dasuni. Right now I'm at the beach in Panadura where these whales beached themselves. As you can see behind me, officers of the Navy, the police and the Wildlife Department are trying their very best to release the last of these whales back to the ocean. They're trying their very best. However, these animals keep on coming swimming back to the shore. I have here with me one of the leading marine biologists in the country, Dr. Asha Devos. Doctor, can you please tell us as to the possible reason why these whales beach themselves?
Yes, so pilot whales are known for beaching themselves across the world, unfortunately. What happens is they're very, very social animals. They tend to be in big family groups. So if they stray, into areas where it's a little shallow, where the waves are breaking, pushing them onto the shore, not one of them, all of them get pushed in, and that's exactly what we've seen here. It's shallow, there's a reef, they've come over the reef, they've been pushed in by the waves, and they've been struggling here for many hours today.
Doctor, can you tell us what the authorities can do as the next step?
Yeah, so I think the key thing right now is its urgency, right? These people have been working really hard all day from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The animals have been working hard for their lives also. So everyone's extremely tired, but the most important thing is to get the animals beyond the wave break and into the deeper water. Because if they are within this wave break, they're going to keep getting pushed back to shore, they're going to fatigue even more, and it's not going to be a good situation. So authorities really have to assist in trying to get these animals out there. We can't do it with just manpower. We do need some kind of a jet ski or something that can help to do that.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's back to you, Dasani, at the studio.
Thank you for that, Senitha. Also in local news, Attorney General Dappula de Oliveira has instructed the Acting Inspector General of Police to investigate a social media disclosure of an alleged land grab of property owned by people living abroad by an alleged influential political group.
This was confirmed to News First by State Counsel Nishara Jayaratne, the coordinating officer to the Attorney General. According to the State Counsel, a video clip containing CCTV footage had revealed 4 individuals had forcibly taken over land owned by Sri Lankans living overseas and sold them by preparing fake deeds. These individuals have been identified as Hambantota Mayor Iraj Ravindra Fernando, Dexter Ajith Balasuriya, Sanit Sanjeeva Veeraratne and Mohammed Masahir Mohammed Nazir Deen. The Attorney General's department said it is evident that Dexter Ajith Rohana prepared fake deeds for Eraj Ravindra Fernando. Further, Eraj Ravindra Fernando uses personnel from his own private security service to forcibly enter the premises, said the AG's department. The Attorney General instructed the acting IGP to investigate the said events and direct the Criminal Investigations Department to conduct the inquiry. The Attorney General said the progress of the investigations must be reported in 7 days.
Even amidst the COVID-19 resurgence in the country, Minister Mahinda Amaraweera continues to stay fit. We leave you tonight with some Facebook footage of the minister making the most of quarantine. Now, before we leave you tonight, tomorrow is the all-important US presidential election, and this is a News First report on what's to take place.
Americans voting tomorrow will decide whether Donald Trump will remain in the White House or not. Who is ahead at the moment, and what are the decisive states in this year's presidential election, and most importantly, how has COVID-19 impacted this year's presidential election in the United States? Donald Trump is being challenged by Democratic Party nominee Joe Biden, who is best known as Barack Obama's vice president in the previous regime, but has been in US politics since the 1970s. The two candidates are racing to drive out the votes of Americans not among the more 91 million who already cast early ballots as the election started months before the pandemic and then was defined by it heads into its final frantic hours. Tomorrow's moment of destiny and what could turn into a prolonged count owing to the crush of mail-in votes will decide whether Americans reject Trump after a single term or re-up for 4 more years of his brazen presidency. The US national polls are a good guide to see who is the most popular candidate in the country, but necessarily it is not a good way to predict the end result of the election. Let me give you an example. Back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, but still she lost. Why? Because the US uses a system called an electoral college, so winning the most votes doesn't always win you the election. As Hillary Clinton discovered in 2016, the number of votes you win is less important than where you win them. In the electoral college system the US uses to elect its president, each state is given a number of votes based on how many members it sends to Congress, House and Senate. A total of 538 electoral college votes are up for grabs, so a candidate needs to hit 270 to win. Currently, Joe Biden has been ahead of Donald Trump in most national polls since the start of the year. He has hovered around 50% in recent months and has had a 10-point lead in most of the occasions. At the moment, polls in the battleground states looks good for Joe Biden. Analysts suggest that Biden looks strong in the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. 3 states his Republican rival Donald Trump won only by 1% back in 2016. But it's the battleground states where Donald Trump won big in 2016 and his campaign team will be most worried about. His winning margin in Iowa, Ohio and Texas was between 8 to 10% back then, but it's currently looking much closer in all 3. And now to the most important question, the US presidential election 2020 and COVID-19. Let me tell you important 2 numbers. 30,700. 30,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19 and 700 people have died of COVID-19 as a result of the 18 rallies organized by Donald Trump in the months of June to September this year. Researchers conclude that on average, the 18 events produced increases in confirmed cases of more than 250 per 100,000 residents. According to data from a foreign media poll, just 35% of Americans approve of how President Trump has handled the crisis. That figure climbs among Republicans, but only to 76%. On his own health, 72% of respondents said that Mr. Trump did not take the risk of contracting the virus seriously enough, while the same numbers said he failed to take the appropriate precautions when it came to his personal health. The election will conclude tomorrow against a backdrop where the total number of COVID-19 cases in the United States is closing in on 10 million.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight. For the News First team, I'm Dasni Athada, reminding you to stay safe and stay indoors. Good night.